Grace. Today I'm going to share with you the birth story of my third baby. It's a little bit different. Actually, it's very different than my other two birth stories. If you haven't seen my other two birth stories, I will have them linked in the description. They'll also be on the outro and you can click on them at the end of this video. For my first two babies, I had home births, but for this baby, it was a little bit different. So my third baby, her name is Harmony, and she was born in December of 2016. Her due date was, I believe it was the 6th, and she was born on the 9th of December. And for her, we planned to have a birth at the birth center. And it was mainly because they were kind of down a midwife because one of the midwives was pregnant around the same time and she would have been on maternity leave when I was giving birth. And so they kind of just didn't want to do too much home birthing and they wanted to even it out. So they said I can do a birth center birth. And I was like, okay, that's totally fine. There's not much of a difference. You just have to travel there, but you're still kind of in a homey environment and it's really relaxing and nice. I don't know what's wrong with my voice, but I'm sorry. Anyways, so I went into labor around 12 o'clock and at night. It was around midnight. I got up from sleeping, I went to the bathroom, and then I went and laid back down. And after that, contractions started instantly, and they were excruciating. They were not like longer, stronger, closer together type of deal. It was excruciating, painful. And so I started timing them. They weren't like super close together. So I kind of waited it out a little bit and I called maybe an hour or so later. I called the midwife, told her what was going on. She's like, okay, you sound like you're in early labor. She's like, labor at home for a little bit. Call me back when you feel like they're a lot closer together and stronger. And so about 30 minutes after that, I went to the bathroom and my water broke. Thankfully, I was on the toilet, so it wasn't a big mess. My water broke, and so I called the midwife, and I was like, okay, my water broke. And she's like, all right, I'm about an hour away from the birth center. And she's like, I'll be there, an hour or so. She's like, so meet me, around then. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I have to get a babysitter. It's like 2 a.m, so my husband called his sister and she came to just be at our house while Isaiah and Lillian were sleeping. And so we left probably around 3-ish. We headed out to the birth center. And we get to the birth center, we got settled in. It was really nice. There was a nice big jacuzzi tub and just beautiful room. And so we got, like I said, we got settled, and the midwife checked to see how far along I was and see if I was in active labor. And I was already at an 8, and with dilation, I was dilated to an 8. And oh yeah, and the baby was really high up, so she couldn't really tell if she was feeling a head or a butt when she was checking me. But from all like the times of checking the position of the baby, she appeared to be head down, and so they weren't too concerned about it. There wasn't any like, oh, I wonder if. So I was laboring, and I went and labored in the pool, and around, I want to say, probably around 5:30 maybe, they checked to see how far along, to see if I was ready to push, and I was at a 10, and that's when they discovered that Harmony was actually breached, which means her feet were down and not her head. And so being at a birth center is technically illegal for them to deliver a breached baby. And so she told me that being that I was like already ready to push her out, that I could make the decision to either go to the hospital for emergency C-section or deliver the baby there. But she did inform me that like breech births can last longer. It can be a longer process of getting the baby out, and her heart rate was already starting to accelerate. So she kind of left me and my husband alone to decide what we wanted to do, and we decided, like, let's just go to the hospital. We don't want to risk anything major happening. So we got in the car. I was in, full-blown labor. Got in the car. We rushed to the emergency room, and they took me in really quick. They checked to confirm that she was breached, and they put me for the C-section, they put me under anesthesia, which honestly I'm kind of happy about, because I was, like I said in my previous videos, like I'm terrified of C-sections and everything like that. So I'm kind of glad I was asleep through the whole process. I remember like just so much going on. They like tied my legs down, and I was like having horrible contractions. The baby was trying to come, like she was moving down, and they're like yelling at me, telling me not to push, even though I wasn't pushing. It was just like my body was like tensing up because of contractions and everything. But so they're like pinning me down, tying me down, and the anesthesiologist is asking me all types of questions, and it was just so chaotic. I was just like, oh my gosh. Honestly, for me, it was like the worst experience I could have ever like been through with that. So finally I was out, and they did the C-section, got her out, and I remember waking up, there was nurses, and my baby wasn't around, my husband wasn't around, no one was around that I knew, and so I was just like, oh my gosh, where's the baby? Where's my baby? You know, and they're like, don't worry, she's with dad, you know, not a big deal, you're fine, you're in recovery. And I was like, okay. And then my mom comes in, and she works like literally right next to the hospital, and so she was going into work. It was like 6:20 that the baby was born, and so she was kind of heading into work, but she came to see me real quick, and I just saw my mom. I just started bawling and crying, and she's like, what's wrong? What's going on? And I was like, I'm just emotional, Mom, that's all, I'm just emotional. And I just remember, because I was still on the drug and coming off of it, I was saying the funniest things. I don't even remember what they were, but I remember I was being a little loopy. Anyway, so I got out of recovery. They transferred me to my room. I honestly don't even remember the first time holding Harmony. I don't remember the first time seeing her, like, because of the being on the drugs. Like, I don't remember that part. It kind of hurts, and it sucks that I don't really have that memory of when I first looked at her or first held her. But we get to our hospital room, you know, and it was a normal hospital stay. You stay, and you just recover, you get to know your baby, you nurse your baby, and all of that. And so, with C-section, you're generally supposed to stay in a hospital for 3 days. So she was born on a Friday morning. So we were there, and then Sunday afternoon rolls around. Now I'm just going to get into after her birth, because she was born with a liver disease, and I want to kind of go into detail, but not too much, because this video will be way too long. So I'm going to do a little bit, and then next week I'll continue it. But so Sunday comes around, and we were just hanging out. We weren't expecting to be discharged. We were expecting to be discharged Monday morning. But the doctor came in, and she's like, so if you feel comfortable enough, we can discharge you today, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, oh, yeah, definitely. Like, I'd rather just finish my recovery at home than bother being in the hospital for another day. And so she's like, all right, I'll get discharge ready. And for anyone who's been in hospitals, you know how long that could take. But also another thing with hospitals, nurses, they don't really come in too often unless they really need to. And so for me, I was just waiting to be discharged, so they weren't really coming in. And 4 or 5 hours went by. No one came in. Not one person came in. I didn't really like need to call them in and have any specific needs, but it was kind of like, okay, when are we going to be discharged? Like, just waiting, you know? And then finally our nurse came in. I was in the middle of nursing Harmony, and she was like, you need to stop feeding the baby. She's like, we need to do an ultrasound. And I was like, what? Like, what's going on? Why do you need to do an ultrasound? And she's like, this is all I know. She's like, all I know is we need to do an ultrasound. And like with nurses, they get orders from doctors. They do what the doctor tells them to do, but they don't really get details of what's going on until later on, you know? And so the nurse walked out. I started crying. I'm like, what is happening? Like, this is not okay. Like, I don't know what's going on. Probably 30 minutes later, the doctor comes in to kind of just explain to me what was going on. And this is where I'm going to kind of share a little bit more information about the situation of everything. So she came in explaining to me about bilirubin. Bilirubin, hold on, let me look it up really quick so I can give you an exact definition of what it is. So it's like the indirect bilirubin starts from blood cell and then it goes through into the liver. Once it hits the liver, it turns into a direct bilirubin that because of like a chemical change. Often with bilirubin, when it's high, the baby have jaundice. Most babies are born with jaundice. Like that's just a newborn thing. And so often when doctors do the routine testing, blood testing after babies are born, they only will check the indirect bilirubin. They won't necessarily check beyond that. But for Harmony, for some reason, they decided to check both bilirubins, and both were on the higher end. And so they wanted to do an ultrasound on her liver to see if they could like figure out if something's wrong with her liver itself, if it's like a defect or deformity or underdevelopment or whatever. So they did a ultrasound on her liver and everything looked perfect. Like they had nothing to go by. They're like, they don't know why her levels were high. And so after that, they're like, we want you to stay at least another 3 days so we can just keep an eye on her bilirubin and see if it will slowly drop, because often in the first week the bilirubin will start to drop. So they said for a few days, I want you to we're just going to keep you here. They technically discharged me, but Harmony was the patient, so I was able to stay with her. So we stayed for a few more days. Tuesday, I think, rolls around, and her bilirubin levels were slowly trending up. And they're like, we want to do more testing. We want to try to figure out what's going on. Friday comes. They have no answers. They don't know where else to go. We, in our area, we don't have a lot of pediatric specialists, and so they kind of just did as much as they could. And they don't even really have a pediatric unit, actually. It's like very tiny NICU. I don't even think they have one at this point anymore. But so they did what they could, and they said, listen, we don't know what's going on. Her levels are going up, so we need to send you to a children's hospital. The closest children's hospital was 2 hours from us, and so that's what we planned. We decided, okay, this is where we're going. So I'm going to stop the video here. This is where I'm going to end this story, and then I'll continue next week with more details and everything else, the rest of the story basically. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down below and I can answer them in our next video. And just like the video, subscribe so that you can be notified, hit the bell, and that way you can know when the videos come out. It's every Wednesday that I do my storytime videos. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.